My name is Chloe Brossman. Today is April 23rd, 2018, and the time is 4:57. And we are at St. John's Northwestern Military Academy, and I'm interviewing Bob Smith, who was born June 6, 1931, in Hartford, Connecticut, and served in the Korean War from 1949 to 1953. Mr. Smith was the rank of a Sergeant Marine in the Marines and a Petty Officer 3rd Class in the Navy. And he served as a medic. This interview is sponsored by the Bell Tower Memorial Project. To start off, where were you before you entered the service?
In Connecticut. In Connecticut.
And what were you doing in Connecticut?
Oh, I had just gotten out of high school and I was working odd jobs and things, and decided that whatever I was doing I was not unhappy, so I joined the Navy.
Tell me about your early weeks of training and how you adapted to the military life.
Well, they made sure you adapted because they'd start you off fairly easily, but then they would get tougher and tougher and tougher, you know. The Marines or the Navy would love to say, drop down and give me 50. What they wanted was 50 push-ups. I did 3 the first time. The first one was a good push-up. The second one was okay. The third one was horrible.
So where were you stationed first?
I was stationed at Great Lakes, Illinois. That's where I went through Navy boot camp. I left there and went right from there to the hospital, what was called Hospital Corps School, and that was in preparation for going on after that. Hospital Corps School was right there at Great Lakes, Illinois. And then from there, I went right to the Naval Hospital, also at Great Lakes, Illinois. So I spent quite a bit of time there.
Did you move anywhere after that?
Well, yes, after I was stationed at the hospital for several months, the Marines called me up and said, come on in, we got something for you to do.
And why did you go to the Marines after being enlisted in the Navy?
Because the Marines don't have medics of their own. And at the Hospital Corps School, we got the equivalent of a nurse's training, actually an RN. And so we already had medical trainings per se, and then the Marines took us and they expanded on that for field medical training, you know, bandaging up people who had been wounded.
So at what point did you end up going to Korea?
This was after going through Marine boot camp and the field medical training. And so that was August of ¡51, I actually went to Korea.
What was your initial reaction upon going to Korea?
Scared to death. Absolutely frightened, out of my mind. But we all were. But I can tell you my biggest fear was, as a medic, if I were lying in the relative safety of a foxhole or a bunker and there was incoming artillery and Marines were calling for my help, would I freeze and stay right where I was in relative safety, or would I go and do my job? This kept me up day and night for 2 or 3 nights. This bothered me more than being actual in battle. So.
How was your trip to Korea?
Well, it was my first cruise. I decided that from then on, when I was going to go on a cruise, I'd probably pay more attention to the brochure. No, it was a troop ship, very crowded, of course. The bunks were 5 high, and you barely had room to turn over in the bunks. The food was excellent. It really was good. The showers were salt water. They gave us bars of soap that were supposed to overcome the salt. Didn't do anything. And so you stood there and let the water run over you. And so after 2 or 3 days of that, your skin got kind of crusty. And then I found out why they called sailors old salts, because you're salt all over you.
When you arrived in Korea, what was your first task to do?
Well, I went to what was called a staging area, and this is where all the medics, they call us corpsmen or medics, either way. This is where all the medics got assigned to wherever there was a need. And there was artillery and intelligence and supply and so on. And I was one of the lucky ones that got to assign to a rifle platoon in the infantry. So that was my first duty.
Tell me about why you were lucky to get that.
Lucky to get that? It was strictly a short, the draw the you know, what I wanted to say. The straw, whoever drew the shortest straw. There was no particular reason that you know, they just, you go to here, you go there, you go there, and that was it.
What do you think your greatest obstacle was initially?
Overcoming the fear.
Overcoming the fear.
Yeah, it really chewed at me.
Did it affect you in the daily tasks that you had to do?
No. I got over that fear of getting out of a foxhole or a bunker because somebody needed me. And so I forgot my own fears. I just want to take care of the guy who had his leg blown off or whatever, you know.
So where were you stationed in Korea for most of the time?
I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. It was out in the middle of nowhere, you know. We weren't near any towns or anything. The only time I was near a town is after I was relieved off the front lines. I went to a field hospital, something like the MASH you see. Not like that at all, trust me. And that was near Seoul, Korea, which is the capital of South Korea. And it's about halfway up and very close to the west side of Korea. That's the only town I really remember.
What did you do most of the time when you were in the area that you don't know where?
Bandaging up people, just taking care of people.
Can you describe that for me?
Well, it was always very tough running across somebody who's just looked terrible, and but at the same time, I felt I can help this guy. You know, I can really do something. The only part that hurt is when somebody was hurt so bad, I knew there was nothing I could do for him, and this really hurt me. Still does today. I've wondered, did I do whatever I could have, you know, that sort of thing. But it was actually a lot of satisfaction in taking care of people, seeing them put on a stretcher and taken down to the hospital ship or wherever, and knowing that I had helped them. You know.
So what would you consider to be your most important contribution during your service?
Doing all of that, taking care of people, taking care of wounded. You know.
What do you think your most inspiring moment out of the entire service would be?
We were at a Marine Corps reunion, and I really didn't know anybody. It was an entire battalion that I was in, and I didn't know a soul. And it was a room about like this, and there were a couple hundred guys in there. And one guy way across the room kept looking at me, and I didn't recognize him at all. Well, after all, it's 50 years after the fact, you know. But somehow he's trying to remember me. And suddenly he broke loose and he got about as far as that camera, and tears started coming out of his eyes. And he walked up and he gave me a big bear hug. And he told me I'd saved his life. That was the most inspiring moment, something I will remember all my life.
That's really good. Did you encounter other people like that in your service?
You mean other medics?
Other people who were thankful of your service?
Oh, the Marines all loved the medics. They just took good care of us. They saved myself several times. They really took good care of us. They actually came back through the front lines when our position was overrun, and I was taking care of two guys who were wounded, and we knew we were going to get overrun, and so I dragged them back into a bunker way in the back, and they actually passed us right by. We never knew if it was the Chinese or the Koreans, by the way. It was one or the other. And all of a sudden, here comes these 5 Marines. They somehow broke through their lines to come back and get us. And they risked their lives to do so. But this was common, very common. The Marines loved the medics, always took good care of us.
Can you describe your friends that you had during the service?
Well, the most friends I had was really when I was in the Navy. Um, they were from all different parts of the country, and somehow there's four of us, and somehow we just gelled together, and we went on what's called Liberty, a pass to go into town someplace, and got real close to these guys, very close. Learned about their families, and they learned about my family, and so on.
Did you hear from home often?
Do I hear from home?
Did you hear from home when you were in the service?
Oh, my mother wrote at least once a week, probably twice a week. My aunt, her sister, wrote several times a week. And they always included a package of dry soup mix in their letter. So I could just add hot water, and, yeah, all very often. Oh, yeah.
That's good. When you were on the front line, when you had downtime, what did you do for fun to pass the time?
Just talked and told jokes, that's all. It was always like waiting for something to happen. Mm-hmm. And so we just tried to divert our minds with stories of back home and that sort of thing. We'd get real inventive. We made ice cream out of snow. We'd take snow, put it in a helmet, add cocoa powder, powdered milk, and sugar, and mix it all up. It really wasn't like ice cream, but really wasn't bad, It really wasn't bad. Or we got sea rations, and they were little cans about that high, and we'd take a helmet and pour spaghetti and meatballs in there, or ham and lima beans, and mix it all up and have stew. That was whatever way it turned out, it was wonderful.
So what were daily activities that you had to do, daily tasks that you had to do when you were there?
No task, just wait for action to happen. There was nothing to do in between. We made our own. If we were going to be in one place for a long time, in other words, stay in a defensive position, we'd build these really elaborate bunkers where it was below ground, of course, and we'd lay logs across the top, and we'd line the whole thing with cardboard from sea ration cans, especially the bottom where we're laying down, and the sides. And we actually punched a hole in the back of the bunker and punched a hole down from the top, and we built a fire in there. And we saw 32 degrees below zero. And so it really wasn't bad in there when we made a little fire inside the bunker. A little bit smoky, but that's all right.
Can you share with me an example of strong leadership you encountered?
Say again, please.
Can you share with me an example of strong leadership you encountered?
My platoon leader. When I got off the ship and went to the staging area I told you about, I had to go up to a battalion aid station, and from there I was assigned to walk by myself to my platoon. Mm-hmm. And I got up there. A little side story. I was given a password and a countersign. Okay, so I'm reciting this over and over, but at the same time I'm so scared I could hear the bombs going off and all that. So I got up there and I heard a Marine pull a rifle bolt back, click, click, and I said, oh my God, there's a rifle pointed right at my belly. And so he yelled the password. I couldn't remember the countersign, I was so scared. And so I yelled, Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Yankees, it's a new medic. He says, come on. Well, by then all the firing had stopped, and he took me over to the platoon leader, who seemed younger than I was. And I thought, this is a platoon leader? Well, this guy was a leader in every sense of the word, because when he said go, we went. He was never questioned. We just went no matter how bad it looked. He was definitely a leader, a very good leader. And I would have followed him, all of us would have followed him anywhere.
What do you think the scariest moment was that you had while you were there?
Anytime we were obviously going to be overrun. Korea was a battle of mountains, and we'd be on this mountain and looking at them on that mountain, and all of a sudden the whole field would seem to be moving. You look through binoculars and you see these guys shoulder to shoulder and back to back, row after row after row, and we knew there's no way we're going to be able to avoid that. And that was really scary, yeah, really scary.
What was one of the worst instances you faced?
The worst thing? Probably again when I come across a casualty, it was so bad I couldn't save him. You know, it was just, I won't describe the details, but it was just, there was no way I could save him, and this hurt so bad.
After moments like that, how would you recover?
Well, I'd be on to the next casualty. I was running from one to another. In fact, the guy who told me I'd saved his life, I apologized to him because I didn't remember his face. And he told me, Bob, he says, you were running from one casualty to another. How would you remember anybody? And that was true. I didn't remember a face of all things. You know, I'm looking elsewhere other than a face. You know.
What was probably one of the funniest moments you had while you were there?
The funniest moments was, well, on the way over, we stopped in Japan for a couple of days, and a friend of mine bought a camera. And when we got to Korea, we'd be, if there was incoming rounds of artillery, we'd be down on the ground. This guy would be standing up on top taking pictures. It was funny, you know, all the shells are coming, didn't bother him, he's taking pictures. And he never got hit. Amazing.
Did you end up getting injured at any point during your service?
Very mildly. I was sliding into a casualty on my knees, and there was shrapnel, shards all over the place, and it just tore up my knee a little bit, but that was the worst thing. I was very lucky, very fortunate.
Did you receive any medals of any sort, any kind of recognition for your service?
Only recognition of being in a particular area, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, nothing for outside of that.
What is a life lesson you learned from the military service?
Brotherhood. Without question, brotherhood. It's something that we don't talk about as Marines or sailors, but it's there. You know, for instance, I see the other gentleman over there from the Navy, and right away I have a feeling of brotherhood. Never met the man before until 10 minutes ago, but there's a feeling, and that's something can't be explained.
How did that affect you while you were in the service?
Oh, without feeling dependent upon anybody, and yet there was a feeling that I knew that no matter what, somebody would go out of their way to save my butt. Plain language.
And looking back now, how do you apply brotherhood to your daily life?
Actually, it doesn't apply too much unless I see an ex-serviceman, you know. There's something about it, I just can't explain it. There's no words in the English language for me to be able to express what the feeling is. It's just something that, you want to go up and hug a guy, you know, there's something there. I don't know what it is.
Can you tell me about a moment that really sticks out in your memory from your service?
Getting on a ship to come home. By the way, I had been extended twice because some of the medics were getting killed, and they extended me twice. And I was getting on a ship, and I said, you know, that ship is going to go halfway home, and it's going to turn around. Well, we're on a ship, you know, glad to be going home, and all of a sudden the ship is turning around. And I said, my God, it's happening. Well, what happened was they were painting the stacks, and they took advantage of the wind. So it was only maybe an hour or so, and they turned around again. Oh, but the next happiest moment was seeing the Golden Gate in San Francisco. We're really, really home, you know, especially after getting extended twice. This was, wow, overwhelming.
What were some of the orders like when you were in the service?
Orders?
That you received from people who are in higher ranks?
Well, it was all based upon discipline, and physical growth, all of it. However, it's interesting, I learned more history in the service than I ever learned in school. I don't know why, but somehow it became really interesting. Yeah.
What do you think was the main idea that they tried to teach you when you were in the service?
Discipline. Absolutely discipline. That's why there's close order marching. People don't understand this close order marching. It's the reason for it is when you're given a command, you do it without thinking, and that's what it's all about.
Looking back at your younger self now, how do you think being in the military changed you?
Oh, I think I'm able to handle problems better because the problems now are so minuscule compared to those problems, you know. I mean, I worry about this or that or the other, but it doesn't dig at me or anything like that.
Do you have people that stood out to you in your mind from your service, who left a big impact on your life, whether it be something random or a big act?
Well, yes. When I got back in the field hospital, we did all what we call meatball surgery, and the surgeon there impressed me with his, he set an example for all of us. For instance, we went one time 62 hours without stopping surgery. And he just set the example. He's always cheerful, you know, and never complained. And he impressed me very, very much. Also, I told you, the platoon leader in the infantry. I was very impressed with him.
Can you tell me more about being the field medic? How it's not much like MASH?
Well, it seemed like they were always fooling around in MASH, and there was no fooling around ever that I can remember. In the hospital, it seemed like there was never-ending casualties. It would stop for a day maybe sometimes, but it would always be 2 days, 3 days a week, you know, and that was quite different.
How long were you at the field hospital?
I arrived there in February of 1952, and I went home in November. Oh, no, I left there. Oh, I went back to California in November. So those whatever months those are.
How long were you in Korea total?
I was from 51 until August of 51 until November of 52. Well, they extended me twice because so many medics, the Koreans and the Army, Marines, we could pick out a medic because we had this big extra bag hanging on the side of us, and so we were targets.
Did that idea ever scare you when you were out on the field?
All the time. But at the same time, my mind was so centered on helping somebody, I thought of that more than getting hit, you know.
Can you tell me about the food you had?
The food? Well, actually, I thought it was pretty good. We got a package of sea rations that looked the size of a shoebox every day. Sometimes they couldn't keep up with us, but in there would be things like ham and lima beans, hamburgers and gravy, spaghetti and meatballs, and a couple other things. There'd be packages of chocolate and powdered milk and seasonings and toilet paper. We got in sea ration, and there was a little can opener we got in every one. We would often, I say, mix the food to make who knows how it would come out. But I thought the food was great. I did go from 155 pounds to 130, so
That's
the
keeping in
food.
shape.
But I thought it was pretty good. I had no problem with it at all.
That's good. Was it hard adjusting when you came back?
No, not at all. I adjusted pretty well. However, I did have that post-traumatic stress syndrome for a while. In fact, I'd be beating her up in the bed. I'd start pounding on her, you know. But for some reason, when I went on the honor flight, all that feeling left me. And now I can talk about any detail you can imagine. Before, I couldn't talk about anything. So I kept it all inside. But now it doesn't bother me to talk about it. Sometimes I'll choke up a little bit, but most times I can handle it very well.
So you said you received the training of kind of an RN
Yes.
as a medic. Can you describe for me what the training kind of entailed?
Well, anatomy and physiology and all of that, the whole 9 yards, you know, how to do this procedure and that procedure, giving shots and IVs and the whole 9 yards. It was very intensive. It was only 9 weeks, I think, but we had to go to classes constantly, you know, and very tough. They didn't let you get by with anything. Your score had to be almost as perfect as it could be. Everybody graduated with very high grades. Yeah.
What was the weather like in Korea while you were there?
It was either very hot or very cold. I saw 110 degrees in the summertime and 32 degrees below zero in the wintertime. A lot of snow. It seemed like it would sometimes snow for a couple of days and not stop. But we had to slog through it, you know. Yeah.
Did the weather ever impact your battle situations?
My what?
Your battle situations?
Oh, sure. There were times when it was so cold that nothing was going on. A little side story about Christmas Eve. It had been snowing all day. The weather was so cold, there's nothing going on. And we just hunkered down in our bunkers and tried to stay warm as best we could. And one of the guys, after a while, it was just getting dark, and he said, "Come out, take a look." And the whole countryside was a beautiful white blanket, you know. And it was Christmas Eve. So one of the Marines went out and got this big K-bar knife, mean-looking knife, chopped down a little tree and stuck it in the ground in the snow. And then we had our Christmas tree. So then we decorated it with sea ration can lids and pieces of colored paper that one guy had gotten a package the day before with red paper. So we had red strips hanging all over it. And we had our Christmas tree. Believe me, the most beautiful Christmas tree I've ever seen. And so we're standing around it, and some guys started singing Silent Night. And then one by one, more guys joined in. And then all of us started choking up, of course, you know. Finally, one guy left, and he was doing his best. He'd get 3 or 4 words out, and he'd choke up and tears and whatnot. And finally, he quit, and we just stood there for a long time. And we couldn't wish each other Merry Christmas. I mean, you know. But Semper Fi, which is the Marine Corps motto for Semper Fidelis, always faithful. And we just gave each other big hugs and walked back to our bunker. It was a beautiful, beautiful Christmas Eve.
Did spontaneous moments like that happen often?
Oh yeah, very often. Some guy would save another guy somehow or another. Everybody would come around and give him big hugs and whatnot, you know. These great big Marines with 250 pounds and hugging, you know. I was one of the little guys. In fact, there was another guy named Smith, a Marine, and I'm sure he weighed 260, and I was 130, so they called him Big Smith and called me Little Smith.
Were there Can you tell me about the honor flight experience that you had?
The honor flight? Oh my God, I cried all day. Took the flight down, and then as we left, there were all these people waving and hollering and cheering, you know, and then they had a bagpipe band, and you know, that left us all in tears. We got down there and saw all the monuments, and I got to thinking, all the people that spent all that time and all that money, amazing, you know, absolutely amazing. One of the big things, we got back on a plane to come back, and somebody hollered a mail call. Hadn't heard a mail call in 60 years, you know, really 60 years. So what's this all about? I got a big fat envelope, we all did, and here people have written us, I'm going to choke up if I talk about this, all these notes and letters saying thank you in so many words, you know. From school kids and of course people we knew, and I don't know how they got all these letters someplace. We got off the plane, walked in the airport. There was a long, long corridor. Lined up on either side of the long corridor were all these soldiers, sailors, and Marines in their dress uniforms. Their shoes spit polished, you know, and saluting us, a bunch of tired old guys, and that got to me. Well, if that wasn't enough, we got around the corner, and the whole world exploded. People were yelling and screaming, "Welcome home," you know, duck underneath the ropes to give us a big hug, you know. Well, all of us were doing that, you know, and that was really, really amazing. I'll never forget that all my life. In fact, there was, and by the way, these soldiers, sailors, and Marines, they were not only privates and sergeants, there were admirals and generals there that had taken the time. And these guys had all volunteered. They weren't ordered to be there. They all volunteered to be there. And there were hundreds of them. I thought that was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Beautiful day.
How long was the honor flight?
One day.
One day?
Yeah, we got up at 3:30 in the morning to be down there at 5 o'clock, if I remember. Boarded the plane at 5:30. Didn't come back until roughly 9:30 at night, if I recall. Long, long, emotional day. But it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful.
In closing, this has been an interview of Bob Smith regarding his service during the Korean War. My name is Chloe Brossman, and the time is 5:30. Thank you for agreeing to this interview, and most importantly, thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.